Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Business and Finance Outlook with yours truly, Joel Bhagwandin. Today I have another important guest joining me, Dr. Vishnu Doerga. Dr. Vishnu Doerga is a successful entrepreneur. He has built from scratch, he has grew up in entrepreneurship actually, and he's built many businesses successfully. And today he is the owner of a company that now specifically focuses on building sustainable businesses. He's involved with the coaching business and helping businesses to build capacity in terms of management, training, and all the soft skills, a full suite of service. So, Dr. Durga, thank you for joining me on this program. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Um, when we started this program is meant essentially to provide information and educate the Guyanese in general to understand what is happening in our country from a public policy financial standpoint so that people could understand how to make decisions, investment decisions for existing businesses, and how to build a business plan more or less to who want to become entrepreneurs with all the opportunities that we have. And from the individual side, for persons, individuals, professionals to understand where the country is going, what are the opportunities for employment, and to understand the opportunities for employment, we have to understand what are the skills that we need to invest in. So I often make reference to our labor force statistics, where we have a ratio of less than 5% of the labor force have possess a tertiary education. So it means about 95% of the labor force has less than a tertiary level education. That tells you of the quality of human resource we have in the country. Now, the goal to develop a country, we need to flip that ratio the other way around. And when we look at the grand scheme of things where the country is heading, aside from oil and gas and all the opportunities that oil and gas would drive, the government is investing in heavily in terms of diversifying the economy, agriculture. When you listen to the president, he's speaking of the new economy. And the new economy he's talking about is a service economy, a tech economy, a knowledge economy, and you're in the knowledge business, right? And with all that being said, on one hand, there are persons, when you open the newspapers every day, where are the opportunities? The more I was listening to a program with the AG on another forum who says that there is much more the government would like to do. Much more can be done, but how much you could do is limited by the extent of the capacity you have. So when you take all of that into consideration, right, there are persons who say, look, the government is not doing enough, there's not enough opportunities, where are these opportunities, where are the jobs, right? So you have two sides of debate or two sides of views or perspective. One of the few that I've been, doing this program and do what I do as an analyst and a writer is to demonstrate that we have to change our mindset. What the country is going through requires everybody to, when I say everyone, businesses, individuals, to inculcate a mindset change, to be able to identify opportunities. But for you to identify opportunities and change that mindset, it means you have to take some action as well.
Yeah.
You have to invest in yourself. You have to develop yourself. You can't sit and wait and expect something to come, right? You have to do something for you to achieve something, and you have to understand that this future that we talk about, or this future that we dream about, we have to make the investments or whatever needs to be done today. We can't wait until 5 years from now for the future to come and you make no preparation for it. Otherwise, there is a term in economics or in business called opportunity cost. You'll miss that opportunity. And I see this happen many times, when I used to work in the banking sector. People come for loan And the reason why they want the loan, they want this loan to approve almost immediately because there is this opportunity and they're going to lose it if they don't get this money now. Now, you know, you're in business. It takes time for a loan to be approved, right? And so by the time the loan is approved, they'll lose that opportunity. The perspective they have now, well, the bank can work with me, access to capital is difficult, but failing to acknowledge that they did not make preparations to study the market, understand where the demand is going, look at your historic trend, understand public policy, understand how these decisions would influence the market and all these things will influence business and to plan more or less for the future. So with this background, Dr. Durga, you know, giving you an understanding of what the objective of this program is and what we want to talk about today, the message we want to deliver today. Tell us about from where you sit as an entrepreneur, helping businesses to prepare for the future. You do this to a large extent. How do you see the economy? Where do you see the opportunities for the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity, Joel, to participate here today. It is true that Guyana is now in a different cycle, a cycle where there's a much higher level of demand. A lot of this is driven by the oil and gas investments. However, the good thing with the oil and gas investments is that there are a lot of other spin-off industries. We have a growing population as well, and that's not mainly due to us being more active. We have a lot of people coming into Guyana, a lot of expats coming here, a lot of migrants are coming here as well. And everyone who comes to this country requires somewhere to live. They need to eat, they need to have clothing, they need to move around. So all of that is creating a lot of demand for other industries that we have. Now, we can remain in a state where we don't see the opportunities. And I can tell you later on in the program the different ways in which we're contributing to making sure that people are ready for the opportunity. But there's also something that happens in people's mindsets where they start having this dependence on somebody else is going to come fix this for us. And in the past, you know, we've had our political leaders, and in the past when demand was very low and we really did depend heavily on the activities of a government, I can understand why that mindset might come into play, where what is the government doing, what is this person doing? And that dependence has still held us prisoner to some extent in our mind. And what I would ask persons to really think about is, what do you want for yourself? What do you want for your family? Get started there. Don't worry yet about how you're going to get there. Because in many cases, because people haven't chosen a destination, they can't see the path. Right? Yeah. If you need to get to Suriname, you first have to decide that you want to get to Suriname. After that, you're going to decide if you're going by boat, by road, by flight. Then you make those decisions. Most people, they do that the other way around. They want to know, how am I going to get there? Where are you going? And so step one is, what do you really want to achieve? Some simple steps are, unless you're 90 plus, get educated. If you're 90 plus, you know, I hope you have some savings set aside, your family takes good care of you. But I've seen people, we're educating some people right now in their 70s and 80s. And you know, as a student of business, when we're talking about vision, one of the questions we always ask persons is, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I find it difficult sometimes to ask people who are 80 years old, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Because I'm always afraid that they say in a coffin or so. But the people are investing time in developing new knowledge, gaining new knowledge, developing new skills, gaining new abilities, in order to then put those skills to work in some industry. And you mentioned some of them. Agriculture, I think, not just agriculture, I think Guyana has become a fairly efficient agricultural producer. And we have, in many cases, exported the raw materials. We haven't really processed it. So I think there is massive scope in agro-processing, where we also do preservation. I love going into the interior of Guyana. And sometimes we're driving across mangoes, or we see pine rotting on the side of the road. And that is a massive opportunity for these products to be processed and preserved and packaged well, so that we can then utilize it for local sales, because we import a lot of these same things that we produce here in Guyana And so we could cut that that import bill as well, and we could start exporting so that we can gain revenues from that. Because in many cases, our farmers are caught in this cycle of, bora is expensive now, and 100 of them start planting bora. Guess what happens 6 weeks from now? It's the
Yeah.
cheapest commodity on the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
And if we actually get ourselves educated about how markets work, we can then time it better. We can go to the banks with proper business plans that demonstrate to the bank that you have the competence to do what is on paper. Because one of the mistakes many people make is, yes, they expect money from the bank, but the bank is holding my money that I have in savings, your money that you have in savings, and they have a responsibility to make sure that that money is secure. So yes, we know our banks are risk averse, but it doesn't mean they don't lend.
Right.
They will lend to people who are both competent to deliver, have a clear plan of action, and are investing in something that there's significant demand for.
Correct.
Yeah, and, yeah.
If I may, you made some important points. Take the business plan example. If you depend on who you speak with in the private sector, you hear of this access, and this has been a long mantra. We have an access to finance problem, cost of capital problem. I'm not saying that those are not problems, or I don't want to say barriers, but I have a different perspective because there is excess liquidity in the banking sector. All the banks are looking for opportunities to lend. So the question is not, yes, we have to have a more modern capital market. That takes time. But the important question that we have to look at is, how do I access financing? Not access is a barrier. How can I access this financing? What do I have to do to be able to access financing? Now, risk comes at a cost. You have to price risk. Commercial banks are set up differently, depositors' money, so they have to manage, they can't lend widely. So how do I present a bankable case? How do I present a feasible case? And most times, people take, and I could speak authoritatively for this because I've worked in the banking sector for a long time, and half of that time I spent in credit, reviewing business plans and well, not even business plans, an idea, right? You now as the credit officer have to go and do a business proposal, which that's not how it's supposed to be. The client is supposed to come with a business plan. And most of the times it's a superficial business plan, meaning it's just an idea. They haven't done anything to de-risk the project. So there are a lot of persons who want to get into business but don't want to take risk. Business is about taking risk. Taking risk means measuring risk, right? So you have to be prepared to lose some. So I give you a quick example. The past couple of for the past since latter part of 2020, I've been getting a lot of requests for proposals to submit to various agencies for different purposes, fiscal incentives, land acquisition, and so on. And a lot of persons went ahead. When I tell them what is my fee, they go ahead and they pay the fees, right? All you're paying me for is a proposal. You're not paying me to get through. I am not the authority. Then there are some persons who don't want to spend money for a proposal, which is part of the requirement. You could go to anybody. You don't have to come to me, right? Some person don't, because if they're going to spend X amount of dollars, am I going to get through? The thing about you have to take risk is either you do what is required. If you're successful, you win. If you're not successful, well, you lose some. Look for something else, plan B, right? So in business, you have to take risk, understand the process. That's just one example. And you could share many more examples from
I would like to add to that, because before, I'd really wish that when people have ideas, that the first thing they do is they put it down on paper to first understand who really wants this product or service that they have. And you can do that for any product or service. Somebody must pay the bill, right? Not because you like the idea means that people are going to come run and pay you for that. Secondly, who else is doing what you're doing? Maybe somebody else had the idea a year ago, but you're not aware of them. And then you go spend all your savings or borrow money to get it started, and you recognize that somebody else is doing it better than you. And that is market research, right? Yes, I have the idea. I think this subset of people are going to be willing to pay for it. Who else is doing it? If nobody else is doing it, fantastic. Now you have a chance. If other people are doing it, first you have to determine, can I do it on a bigger scale so I can win with economies of scale? Or can I do it better than they do it so you can win on economies of scope? Is there something that the current providers are not providing that the market has told you that that's exactly what they want?
Or if I can't do it bigger, economies of scale, or the other example you give, can I buy over that business? Can I make an offer?
And that is not yet a common thing in Guyana, because people hold on to their babies.
Correct.
Right?
but soon enough, as soon as people start to, let's use this controversial example, Trinidad and Tobago. Recently, there's a story in the papers, Marriott. The Marriott put out a tender. Apparently, based on the reports, the Marriott put out a tender for a company to provide transportation services. Now, based on the report, the arrangement that was in place, right, was somebody formed a company, formed an association, and was managing the operation. So all these taxi drivers, local taxi drivers, were actually employed with that company, had a contract with that company. So the owner in that arrangement, he realized that this business model is no longer feasible to him. It can't pay him for the headache and the stress and that he has to deal with, I don't know if it's taxi drivers or just in general. So the company now, Marriott, put out a tender advertising for company.
Yeah.
Now, no Guyanese company applied. A Trinidad company applied. They met the criteria and they awarded the contract. Now, how are you to blame? How are we to beat up the Trinidadians for that? What's stopping a group of these guys? You know what is the cost to incorporate a company? About
67,000, the legal fees.
Yeah. You go through an attorney, it's about $300,000
max. Yeah.
Right. So if these same taxi guys could have formed a company, hire somebody to manage it, do all the work, and there are so many logistics and service companies now that you don't have to do the work. You pay a company, they get all your company registered, they do all the legwork.
Yeah.
Right, and participate in that. But that example could be replicated in many instances, and that's how we lose opportunity, because we have to understand that the business environment is changing and the country is changing, and that is what the president meant when he said, if the local private sector is not gonna make the investments and invest in the areas that we want to develop, then we'll have to bring in foreigners. No, you can't fix with that.
Two things on that. When a foreign company invests here, they don't make a profit on day one. What does happen is they generally inject capital into the market that they're entering into, and whatever employment they generate is usually local labor, local professionals, and the taxi drivers. It's local taxi drivers who are still doing the work,
Right.
and their profits come at the end. The bigger the investment they make, the longer it takes to make profits. Hopefully they'll make much larger profits as well, but they understand the process of delayed gratification. In many cases in Guyana, we have learned instant gratification. I did work today, I want to see more money tomorrow or this afternoon if possible. If I worked for the week, I want to see my money at the end of the week or end of the month. So that is one of the things that we do have to get past. If we're not going to make the investments, we shouldn't be complaining, because either way, if somebody else makes the investment, it's still the country that benefits, right? The service exists. Maybe the service gets better. The good thing when foreign companies operate here is you have a fantastic opportunity for transfer of knowledge. Right. Because until somebody else does it better, we keep accepting more of the same. Yeah. So that's another benefit as well. And then it comes back again to skill building and being able to see a little bit further than our noses, because that might be the norm in a year from now in Guyana, that the big taxi companies either take over or the Uber-like opportunities then start springing up and remove a lot more of the current operations. And I think because we're going to leapfrog a lot of development, it doesn't make sense us going through the normal development curve. We're in a position where we can look at, okay, what happens in other countries that are already doing it at that level, and just invest in that technology. So we don't have to go through the normal cycle. But it requires us, again, as Guyanese, to think a little bit bigger, understand that we're at the center of the world to some extent, because every single day we get 5 to 10 inquiries coming from global companies who are looking at what's available. And if I were to ask you, if you feel something is wrong with you medically, right? You're not feeling too well or so, what do you normally do?
Go to the doctor.
Go to the doctor, right? So that is what happens to us medically. If our eyes are so, we stop seeing, both of us wear glasses. What do? We go to the optometrist, right? Legally, our neighbor is starting to build on our piece of land. What do? We go to the lawyer.
Right.
Guess what happens in business? In business, everybody with an idea thinks that they're going to solve it themselves.
Yeah.
They don't go to the specialist and the business doctors. They don't go to the financial analysts. They don't go to the people who are specialized in developing plans and test those plans to make sure they make sense before we send you to a bank. The worst thing we could do is send someone to a financial institution and then they're not well prepared. So nowadays, plans also have to go with the preparation, and we actually don't take on anyone who doesn't have the competence in what they're proposing to a bank. Because if I was a banker, you were a banker, you're going to look through that easily.
Right.
So we do have to make sure that they have some level of authority in their space, some level of competence, some level of intellectual property, or they trademark something in order for it to be sure enough. Because even venture capitalists, yes, they're less risk averse, but they're still looking to get back their money. They still want to safeguard their money as well. And then, are we open to collaboration? A very good friend of mine always says we're the cooperative Republic of Guyana that does not cooperate, right? Because if we don't start collaborating and saying, all our companies, there's probably not a single company I own now, and we're up to 8, that I'm 100% owner. Some of my companies, I'm a minority owner. Why? Because the things that the other partners bring to the table, I don't have. And if we remain apart, I'll do a little bit, they'll do a little bit, instead of us coming together and achieve something.
And you wouldn't be able to
bigger.
Maximize the value.
Definitely.
Right. And I want to pick up on two things you talk about: knowledge transfer, and the venture capitalist example. Yeah, the venture capitalists are less risk averse, but they take higher risk.
Yeah, they do.
And therefore the higher risk comes at a cost. So what is the model? The model right now I'm trying to work with an institution to see how we could bring that type of institution to Guyana to provide that type of service. So the feedback that I'm getting from a few interesting institutions is that they don't have the appetite for the micro level, because that is high risk. They have the appetite for more like a private equity, which is you investing essentially in mature companies, but mature companies that are problematic. So they would invest their capital, fix it up, and keep it for and then exit at some point. So that is essentially how a venture capital works, but it's higher risk. And so, I met a few clients recently with these beautiful ideas, brilliant ideas on paper or in theory, but they're not willing to give up some equity to an investor. They want to borrow all the money from the bank, but the bank wouldn't give you 100%. You have to de-risk the project. You have to, a project has to evolve from any venture. It has to evolve from an idea to implementation. So how do you do that? Have you, if this is the business, if the business is to build a studio, have you procured any equipment? Have you spent any money as yet? Did you put in any equity? Have you gotten whatever permits you need? Have you done your research on the type of equipment you want? And things like that help to de-risk the business plan. Because
it comes back to one thing, that when I was 19 years old and I was running behind the largest bank in Guyana for $1 million overdraft, my uncle put me to sit down, and he's one of my mentors as well, and he put me to sit down and he said, when you have nothing, people want cash, your house, your kidney, your wife, your firstborn child, all of that. And when you have credibility, they never ask for any of that. So I would also say that one of the key things for you to be able to get funding, for anyone out there who's thinking about the requirements of financing, is work on your credibility. Because even for ourselves, we invest, we buy companies as well, we buy shares of companies. We go look at the founders and we look at their track records and we look at are they people of their word. When they say something, will they do it? And banks also do that. They also do a background check, a credit check, make sure that you go to creditinfo.com, download your credit score. I was surprised the first time, it was 5, 6 years ago, when I downloaded mine and I saw my score was in the 600 range. Why? Because I had a credit card with one of the banks and there's a $60 renewal fee, but I wasn't getting the notice to do the renewal, or I didn't know that I had that going on, and that actually pulled down my credit score. And fixing that, making sure everything is clean, it's now over 800. And that then speaks to, somebody who pays their bills on time. It's an action, right?
Right.
So don't go asking the bank for money and you're not paying your light bill on time and your GT&T
you're
on
not
time.
Disciplined. Yeah.
And you've said certain things that you haven't been able to back up as well. If you have these ideas, go talk to a professional, sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, so that your idea cannot be shared elsewhere. And also, you may learn some things about the professional that you are not. So NDA must protect both sides, not just the client. Discuss it with them and then test it. In some cases, you could prototype the business. In some cases, you could do business modeling to figure out what's the minimum number of clients I need, and can I see if I can actually get a few people to commit to this. But there are many, many ways to build that credibility. And of course, my advice would also be, please don't get into entrepreneurship, don't get into business if you are not, first of all, a good employee. Because the thing that kills businesses is the lack of good employees. And if you think that you're a bad employee, that's why you're going to go work somewhere else. It's the fastest way, because you can't recognize a good employee. And if you are a bad employee, you might turn into a bad employer, and then that also really destroys the company.
You would not retain.
You can't retain.
Talent.
You can't recognize talent as well if it stumbles in front of you. So I would strongly encourage you as well. Make sure that you can operate really well in a company, and salaries are skyrocketing now. We just spoke a little bit about your salary. Congratulations. But salaries are going up. I'm seeing, average admin now is between 100 to 150. Clerical level is above that. Anything in logistics is going over 300. I'm seeing management in the 500 to 700 range. So salaries are being pushed up because the talent is being pulled by oil and gas directly and indirectly. Even the government is also bringing on people at higher wages now. Then the private sector that has to backfill raises salaries to keep some of the people, but then also to attract new people.
It's demand and supply as well.
So you could actually earn really well in a job where you can perform well, and if there's a path for growth.
That you have the competence, that you now have to enhance your competence. What are the competences?
Your responsibility.
Right? So, exactly. So, one of the examples I wanna extend on that I like that you mentioned is the knowledge transfer. Using this Trinidad situation example. Last week we had Dr. Peter Ramsarup. I had Dr. Peter Ramsarup as a guest. And the message he shared was, we have to ask ourselves, where do we fit? Right? And this knowledge transfer thing is something that we have to see as an opportunity if any international firm comes here, any international player, even Trinidadians. Because I tell you what, I grew up witnessing this. I have seen employees, you talk about good and bad employees. I have seen employees work with people, businesses, learn the business very well, extremely well. Because you're the employee dealing with the customer. What are you doing? You're building relationship. You building the relationship with the customer. So the customer, the owner or the brand, they're dealing with you. So there are quite a few cases that I know of that employees took away the business. They left. So we're talking about, I give you some examples. Salon businesses, beauty salon, distribution business, a very thriving distribution business. I've seen the employee took away that business, built from scratch, because he has the customers. All he needs is the capital, and you could get credit these days, from the supplier. So once you have a secured market, you got a secured customers, it's easy for a supplier to give you credit because you're dealing with them. And so that's how knowledge transfer is important. Perhaps not the best of example on national television, but the truth is that is knowledge transfer, and that's how we have to see the opportunity. How could we learn? And that is what China did. That is what China did to the US on a bigger scale, on a global level. Right? So this is how we have to start looking at it. We have a few seconds We have a few minutes remaining. So we talk a lot about businesses and the opportunities and preparing entrepreneurship, the mindset change, and how to overcome these challenges, how to see challenges as opportunities, and the importance of taking action. In your closing remark, before you give your closing remark, tell us something about what you have to say to employees, to the employee side, to young professionals, and then you could wrap up with a closing remark.
Yeah, so to young professionals, I would say to ensure that you pay attention to the educational opportunities that are out there. You have the GOAL program, you have organizations like Exxon and the Center for Local Business Development that are offering training. We now have a company called Catalia, who's also an operator who just has started to offer training opportunities. Make full use of those training opportunities. Do the best you can at your own job, at your own level of employment, because that's a fast way to grow as well. The example that Joel used, I would also encourage you to make sure if you're going to go on your own, make sure it's something innovative, that it really improves the level of service to Guyanese, because then you'll attract enough people so that you don't end up in these statistics of the 80% that fail within the first 5 years. And if I could give you a free tool, I would encourage you to download the HerVenture app to learn more about how business operates. And if you are an existing business owner, to really get the university in your pocket. And it's free of cost. It's being provided by organizations like ExxonMobil, GTT, MMG. They're all behind that, the Sherry Blair Foundation for Women. And don't worry, not because it says HerVenture, it means no one else can use it. 11% of the users are actually men, and we're now over 6,000 users of the app. So make full use of that. It's on and it's active for at least another year. And I think that is a fantastic way in which you can start to decide, is business really for me? Because business, as Joel mentioned, is heavily about taking risk, more risk than if you're an employee. If you're an employee, you know for sure at the end of the month, your salary is in your account. As a business owner, you really depend on delivering a service, delivering a product to be able to make that income. And in closing, I would like to thank you for the opportunity. This is a very good initiative. The more people get educated, the more they get exposed to different trains of thought. They can then pick and choose what works for them, what they want to do next. And I think we are in a country that is going to experience and is already experiencing massive growth. If you're not seeing it for yourself, please make contact with professionals, people who are seeing it and who could maybe better align you. Remember, you are the average of the 5 people who you hang out the most with. So if you really notice that you're not going anywhere, it might be time to change your crowd.
Thank you, Dr. Doerga, for the very insightful and informative conversation. Thank you for accepting my invitation again. This is not going to be the first and last. I will invite you again from time to time. So thank you once again. Thank you to our viewers. Good night and see you again next week.
Okay.